Hey everyone, this is Jason Teale. I'm a former competitive athlete myself, had an aspiration like most Canadian kids of playing in a National Hockey League. I was a competitive hockey player growing up. My background with my dad being, a champion coach of 12 Canadian champions, being around the game of boxing, moving through that as an athlete, as most athletes, and the transition in life is the bottom line is that we have to be more than just an athlete. And the beautiful thing about my personal growth and development is that I've always been a lifetime learner. I think that's the biggest thing, and being a very curious individual and knowing that there is always at some deep level a solution, regardless of how big the problem may be perceived. So my journey is an embodiment of that, of being a student or being an athlete, being a student. Now I'm a father. My oldest son's 30. I'm going to be a grandfather. I have 3 wonderful children, and I worked in rehabilitative sports medicine. I've been 34 years in healthcare from 1987, 88, when I started my journey in nursing, then into massage therapy, acupuncture, and rehabilitative sports medicine, and peak performance coach. So the progression's been long, 30, almost 30 plus years. I've been in direct client care for with over 50,000 people in a sports medicine environment. And being a part of that was and has been and continues to be one of my deepest desires and greatest contributions, I think, that I'm able to bring to the world, and helping people realize the potential regardless of the obstacles. So segueing a little bit closer to the present time, over the last 4 to 8 years, I've been involved with doing a higher progression of developing into becoming a peak performance coach. I've obviously been under the tutelage of some leading gentlemen in the world that have cut, through some significant research and development. And during that, as I said earlier, my curiosity, insatiable appetite to want to learn has brought me into this world that I am presently in today. And my aspiration is to bring a lot of these methodologies, bundling them up as best as you can, specific to the needs of the athlete and individual that requires them, so that they're able to perform. And in that journey, what's beautiful about it is that I've discovered, even myself, is that there is no upper limit to our potentiality. And that's a beautiful thing when people realize that on the other side of every adversity, there is another opportunity. It's not an ending point. Yeah, what wonderful opportunity. I think it was back in 2012, 2013. I was actually at the Cognizant's office by the University of Montreal. Dr. Fulbert's lab was just around the corner. So being there, I was in the cave, actually. The first time I was ever exposed to NeuroTracker was in a big old cave. This black tent like you put in your backyard. And then I saw the progression go to the flat screen 4K 3D TV with the goggles to the headset. And being exposed to that really excited me, because the bottom line is I actually had the opportunity of doing it while I was doing my training. We went into the Cognizant's lab to get educated and trained on it. And it was amazing being an old athlete myself, and with a little bit of boxing and hockey and hand-eye sport centric athlete. I trained that part of my brain my whole life, dealing with multiple objects, right, coming at you. And you have to be evasive, and you have to make sure you avoid collisions, because that's basically a big part of what NeuroTracker really helps execute for the athlete. And I was able to go from a 0.05, and I got some succession on that, and I got almost to almost a 3.0 in a very short time frame. And that is when I was hooked, lined, and sinkered, realizing how did my brain go from being able to manage something moving this slow and making a mistake. And then we all have an idea of what 3.0 looks like. I know that there's guys that track at a higher level, but 3.0 kind of blew my mind, that my mind was able, and my vision and how all of that physics works in your brain that Dr. Fulbert's worked on, it kind of blew my mind. And I'm literally, as you see me smiling, I'm being so serious. It was like a kid at Christmas time getting a red bike. It opened up part of that curiosity I talked about earlier. It opened up another seed to the potential that we're not tapping into, man. Imagine what Dr. Fulbert discovered, I think almost serendipitously, working trying to help out an aging population to keep them viable in the world. It's so beautiful. Like the headphones that the guy from Sony invented, they were considered a luxury. Now they're a necessity. Imagine that. I truly think something like NeuroTracker, look at it's being implemented into schools now massively. I think it's a revolutionary tool that's going to have a huge implication for a lot of people in a lot of genres. Most importantly, the human condition to be able to build confidence and move forward in their pursuits. The stuff that I do with athletes today and the things that I get them to integrate and implement, because it's multiple pieces. It's not just one piece. It's an integration of multiple things at strategic times. And it's crazy to think for one moment that this technology is coming to the world and various other things, because they have apps now with auto regulation, brainwave entrainment. Like, it's wild stuff happening right now. Imagine the athlete of all sports and what they're able to do cognitively and functionally at high rates of speed under significant demand. I can't even imagine like how wild it is compared to an athlete even 20 years ago, let alone 10 years ago. What's interesting about it is that, you know, we all know going from a seated to a position, going to a stand-up position certainly creates a framework for somebody who's a really good athlete, and it gives them an idea and it opens them up. For me as a coach and a trainer, I never tell my athletes what to do. I get my athletes to really engage in the process of self-discovery, high levels of curiosity, and being a lifetime learner. Because when an athlete embraces that, this tool and all of the progressions, which you know it can go through, you can do so many things. Look at some of the videos of kids on a treadmill, stick handling and tracking. That early video that was on, you know, bottom line is, and using some level of auto regulation where I've used, you know, some of the athletes, I've had them hooked up to heart rate variability and then putting them under task just to see how their physiological response, and use some level of distraction technique and teach them strategies on how to become grounded and get back to their focus so that they can track more efficiently. So based on that question, I truly believe, based on the complexity and the magnitude of these 30 trillion or 100 billion neurons and 35 trillion infinite number of connections, when you think about all of the layers of what NeuroTracker is, I think that there really is, based on the complexity of the human mind, because I think NeuroTracker is an extension of our mind. And the bottom line is, I think there is no upper limit to how creative trainers can be and what they want to do specific to the environment and the athletes. Whether you're an F-18 fighter pilot, a hockey player, imagine you're a wide receiver and you're tracking and someone, you see it all the time, and someone throws a ball to catch it. You know what I mean? Just to give that little distraction to bring them back. So anyways, my applications are minimal, but the bottom line is they're highly effective. And the number one thing, anybody that does any training, remember one thing: however we tweak out small incremental doses, I'm talking like an eyedropper, onto the tongue of an athlete. I want you to think about the drop of water, seriously, from an eyedropper, as a small little drop of confidence. That's all an athlete needs. And you give them a small little parameter, and that's the beautiful thing about that technology, is that even if you're not having a good day, you can go to a lower setting and just do some reps and you can build confidence. So from a confidence aspect, it's another application of that tool to create confidence in the athlete. So just in my context, that's pretty much like with Ryan Moore, who was with the Windsor Spitfires. When I worked with him in 2005, I think he had 5 goals that year. And I was in Windsor and I was down there. He was there for a week at Power Tech Hockey. And there's actually a small video that I have on YouTube where it shows there's no talking, but you see Ryan Moore sitting there and I'm coaching him and I have him hooked up. And he went from a 5-goal scorer in the OHL, and 1 year he went to 25 goals. A good friend of mine, James Humphreys, had the opportunity to work with it. He was actually at Q School years ago, qualifying for the PGA, and unfortunately had an injury and it kind of set him off. But imagine a golfer and what a golfer has to do. They basically play for 5 hours and they have to have their attentional span I think they're only active in their thought processes and they're pre-set up at the ball and the ball going. I think they're only busy for like 7.5 minutes in 5 hours. And what's beautiful about him talking about it anecdotally, because we can't experience what he's experiencing. And anyways, he was fascinated how it was able to help him being able to switch channels in his mind. Being able to, because when you shank a ball, you know what we all do, man? We just go inside and we blow ourselves up. But being able to use that technology to kind of move away and learning how to realize that he wasn't even aware that he was able to shift in and out. Because when you're not tracking efficiently, it probably doesn't have anything to do with your inability to track. Where's your brain's cortical real estate? Is it outside the room? Is it thinking about your girlfriend? So when you think about all of the complexity in that and being able to work in those channels, which we know is in high performance, and being in channel 1, 2, 3, or 4, specific to obviously attentional style, this gives an athlete a lot of, I think, gold. I think it gives them so much insight to where do I spend my time, even when I think I'm on point standing over a ball and I think my eyes are tracking to the hole and I'm thinking about my new 75-foot yacht that I just bought that's in the Bahamas. And then I wonder why I pushed the ball 7 feet to the right. Had nothing to do with the skill. James didn't say it in that much detail, but I remember talking to him during that journey because that's something that is relevant, because that's a guy that's trying to get to the PGA, and he was, you know, in the top, I think, 500 ranked golfers at one time in the world. So he was knocking on the door of a very exclusive 125 club member at the PGA level, right? So the number one thing goes back to something that I said earlier, is about, you know, with an open mind, there will always be a new frontier. That's the founder of Toshiba. That's the framework of the Toshiba company. Words that I live pretty much every day. So in the context, obviously we know when this technology came out a decade ago, there were people looking at it and wondering, what in God's name is this? And as we know, when you're an early adopter, when you're the first guy out down that road, lots of arrows are coming at you. But now 10 years later, and you look at, you know, the people that have used the NeuroTracker, you know, look at Matt, the quarterback from the Atlanta Falcons. You know, now you see F-18 fighter pilots. You have Marines using this technology, NHL players. Those are pretty unbelievable environments that require your utmost attention, because in the context of an F-18 fighter pilot, let's not talk about any other sport here. Think about F-18 fighter pilots or Marines, and they're implementing this technology to give them the capacity to be more focused and be more task oriented, so they're able to execute what they have to do, because the environment that they operate in, bottom line is, you usually don't get a second chance. So anybody that's thinking about integrating this technology, I don't want you to think about a United States Marine or an F-18 fighter pilot in the context, but imagine the application and the integration of this valuable piece of technology that was created here in Canada, University of Montreal, Dr. Fulbert's psychophysics lab. It's proven its worth. And I've had people that have used it. And the bottom line is, it's a powerful tool and it's benefited them. And it goes down to one thing. It's another tool, very powerful tool, that I truly believe works the most important aspect. And that is the human mind.